as faithful as we can to what Christ has given us.
Just because, like, obviously, like you said, like Muslim and atheist and all that, it's a whole lot different than Catholicism and Lutheranism, which are very close in believing in the same things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So
like for a Catholic to be like, you're not doing it right or you are not correct because you're not Catholic, that
you'll definitely hear that from people. I think it depends a little bit on the differences that you're talking about, because Christianity has decided that some differences are severe enough to be really, really critical. You believe in the Trinity, but yes or no, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Do you believe Jesus is the Son of God? That's another big deal one. But
I mean, to call yourself a Christian,
right.
You have to believe that.
You would think so. You would think so.
Yeah, granted.
I wouldn't.
I've met some Christians that would call themselves Christians that do things like baptize in the name of Jesus and don't believe that Jesus is God because of the particular readings of the New Testament that they have. And it left me scratching my head a little bit. But I would never say to them, I don't think you're going to heaven. I guess my experience has been that for the most part with people, I would try to emphasize ways that you could take another step toward the Lord, ways that we could grow together and we can be on the same page, because I think the world needs cheerleaders and not people that tear other people down.
And that's the point of what I'm trying to. So
Yeah,
because I think
I mean, trying to expand.
No, that's
terms rather than just.
It's a really good question. I mean, I can freely admit it makes me a bit uncomfortable because it depends on how you're phrasing it and the context, how I would answer it.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, there are Catholic knuckleheads that will say dumb things that they shouldn't say. That is very true.
Yes.
Sometimes I've ended up in the debate where it's like, I'm with the Protestants. Yeah, you're wrong about this. Or I think you're wrong about this, at least. And I think the church officially does a good job of kind of emphasizing the beautiful things that we have and the access to things that we have, while also leaving the door open to God being God and, drawing people to himself as well as he can. Because his ways are bigger than our ways. That's Corey's next thing.
Yes. Don't put God in a box. I mean, we do technically, but that's tavern. That's a special box.
No, buddy. He's talking about it.
Yeah, it's the whole Ark of the Covenant. So.
Yes.
Yeah, but his manifest presence landed on the Ark of the Covenant. It wasn't. They had put items in the box.
So
but we put God in there.
This is a massive equivocation. We're using the same words and we're using them very differently.
Yes.
So in this case, both things are true at the same time.
I love it. Yeah. So I was wondering if I wanted to comment on the thing, but so God can only this pitfall, avoid it. God can only do this thing or speak this way only. And so similar to he only can speak out of scripture. That's the only way. It's the only way that I can hear from God is if I'm reading the Bible. I've run into people that are like that way, but it's no, actually, you can speak to your heart. You can speak through a song. You can speak through someone's bumper sticker. It's just he literally can use anything that you allow him to. And because English isn't his first language, right? He speaks his own language, and each of us have when I go talk about hearing from God, each of us have a language with him. It's for those of you that have kids, or even think about your friends, you have a different set of language almost. You have different words that you speak to each one of them. You have different ways that you interact with them because everyone is unique. It's you're gonna interact with every person differently. It's some of your best friends, you can go, You can just show up at their house unannounced sometimes. But with other people, like, you can't just do that and walk in and expect, like, what are you doing in my house? It's like, I just said hi to you 2 weeks ago, It's like, no, that's not the case. But like, each person is different. Therefore, you're going to interact with each person. So it's the same way as I see that the Lord does when it comes to speaking. It's not always just this only way that he can speak. And often, and there's sometimes too, that if you get to a point where you are in a place of desolation or a place that you're not like getting your normal way that the Lord kind of interacts with you, sometimes it's the Lord actually calling you to a new way of learning how he speaks or a new way of praying. It's a kind of a fun little something I found out is that like there's sometimes times of desolation is that he's actually inviting you into a new way of praying. But also sometimes he just wants to harden you up so you can be more disciplined. It's also a thing. The next point, the pitfall to avoid, all or nothing on a specific answered prayer. This one happens when people who start having more confidence in like with intercessory prayer or praying for people or praying for a specific situation. It can happen in a way of just like what I'm thinking about is God, if you heal this person, then I'm going to fully believe in who you are now. Or God, if you don't heal this person, then I'm never going to talk to you ever again. Like those things, like ultimatums, that's kind of what I'm looking at. Is an ultimatum prayer. Is that like this or nothing? And I've run into people that have had that, and they are very hurt by the Lord now. I've had people when it comes to just because the last 10 years of my life has been all about charismatic stuff. I've run into a lot of people who don't like the charisms because they ask God for the charisms. I don't know how long it took them, but like they were asking God for them and they never felt like they received what they were looking for, this gift. They were looking for one specific gift, but the Lord was giving them something else. And because the Lord just kind of does whatever in some sense, and whatever he wants to. He's not a genie. He's not like I'm going to put money in, therefore I'm going to put money in and therefore I'm going to get what I want. He's not transactionary. He's going to give what you need in the moment. He's going to lead you with love all the time for you to become to look more like his son, to look more like him. And so when it comes to answered prayers and these types of things, is that like we have to understand that God's going to do what's going to be best for you in that moment, in that situation, and always being ready and open for the answer no, or the not yet answer, or whatever it might be. So, setting yourself up for success. These are just three different points that I came up with of ways that I found that really helped my own spiritual growth. That really kind of accelerated it. Well, the first thing is to have my own disciplined prayer time. So just making sure that I get praying at least every day. Doesn't matter what time you do it, morning, noon, evening, middle of the night, 3 a.m., whatever it is. Whatever is going to be best, what I put in the next one is like whatever is going to be best for you to connect with the Lord. So whatever is going to have you at a place of peace and even in consciousness that you can kind of and mentally connect with where you want to be at with the Lord. Whether it is 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever you can, like maybe you only have 10, 15 minutes that maybe that's all you can kind of do at the moment in the morning because you're just starting, or two, because that's all you might only give yourself but 30 minutes is always the kind of the main one that I like to shoot for a beginner, just because like sometimes it takes you 10 minutes to kind of calm down. So because of that, it'll help out. But regardless, again, whatever is going to be best for you to connect with the Lord. Next one, as you guys start making your first confessions, you can come up with a regular confession schedule. And whether you do it monthly or more than that or less than that, just making it hey, I'm going to do it every 6 weeks or every 2 months or every whatever it might be. The idea is that like because like you're going to confession, not because of being like, wow, look how bad of a person I am, but because I'm like, oh, I get to go, and it's like, I want to go and renew myself to the Lord and kind of come to the Lord and just submit myself to his mercy again. And just kind of come up with, and just like, okay, these are the ways that I haven't been charitable. These are the ways that I haven't been, whatever it might be, I've been too rough or whatever it might be. But, and I don't know if we even mentioned this, but the only necessary time is at least once a year during the Lenten and Easter season. That's actually the minimum that in order for you to consider yourself Catholic, practicing Catholic. And also with the Eucharist, obviously you should also set yourself up for a regular going to Mass every Sunday. My assumption is that you're already going to Mass every Sunday. My assumption is that you're already kind of doing that. But also it's kind of a funny thing. I feel like that in Catholic teaching that you have to receive the Eucharist at least one time a year. And that's during the Easter season. And that's because we had what was that? Is the Jansenism?
Jansenism, yeah.
Yeah. It was a heresy where it's like you're not, or it's like maybe you have a better idea.
It's kind of a heresy. It's like early American Protestants were very much in this vein too. One of the most famous people and the most famous sermons is Jonathan Edwards' "Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God." Like, God is just by his mercy sort of holding you in his hands over the pit of hell. And at any moment, if you do something bad, he's just going to let you go and that's it. And so it's like an incomplete view of God. It's a view of God that's very, very strict, very, very like fire and brimstone, hew to the right path, and maybe you have a hope of being saved, possibly. That was the foundation of American Protestantism. Like, that's Puritan theology to the core. Puritans in New England.
That's like the first Great Awakening kind of sermon, right? Or is that Second Great Awakening?
No, I think the Great Awakening was a little bit more revival kind of thing. I'm less familiar with American Protestant history. Actually, I should get one of those on my Audible. I listen to lots of other histories, but I've never listened to one of American Protestant. But yeah, so it's like an incomplete view of God. It varies in intensity. I would say, like, it's the opposite of the modern world. Where modern world, you far more often hear fluffy Christianity, where it's sort of like, yay, everyone's on the road to heaven, it's all okay, we're all going to be fine, no one goes to hell. Jansen is just like the opposite. Basically, everyone goes to hell, no one will be saved, God is mad at you, fire and brimstone. And in the world today, like, we've probably swung too far in the other direction. Like, this is one of those places where the holy middle, the holy mean, like the narrow road, is a little bit of both of that, right? That God is a God of love, but also that offending him is a big deal. That he wants us to follow him, and it's invitational, but it's also eternity's at stake. And there's a little bit of an uneasy balance between those. But the best answer is probably more so in the middle than at either extreme. The wrong answer is that everyone goes to hell, and the other wrong answer is that everyone goes to heaven. The right answer is in the middle somewhere. And within that, I mean, you can have a different flavor of it, but we've probably got too much mercy and too little fear in our own day. But as someone might say, well, Jesus kind of gave us a bad example because he's merciful. But there's times where Jesus is very intense with sin, where he does bring forgiveness, but he's also like, go and sin no more. Or he throws the money changers out of the temple. Like, there's an intensity to the Lord that is healthy. Sometimes he scares the snot out of people.
I mean, if you came at me with a whip, I think I would. I'd be pretty scared.
Probably obviously that won't happen. I mean, I'm not very much like St. Paul, so if you guys decide to stone me and throw me over the wall of the city, I'm probably going to leave and not come back. Like, I don't know, that takes grace, right?
Yes. So, receiving the Eucharist only one time a year, which the mindset of the Geneticism, which everyone is going to hell, meaning like everyone, like nobody is perfect and nobody can actually receive the Eucharist. That was the mindset. And there's a lot of Catholics that were not receiving the Eucharist at all. And then so they're like, we need to make sure that they receive at least one time a year. And that's why that came around. Or at least that was what was told me. Maybe
Right.
there's a different way that it
No,
came out.
that's very true.
Okay.
Again, now I would say we probably have the opposite problem where we receive the Eucharist far too often with almost no consciousness of sin and no consciousness of like, oh, maybe we shouldn't be doing this. So again, there's a balance much more in the middle. That like Jansenism took it too far. You should never receive because no one's ever worthy enough unless you just go to confession right before and like you're dying. And the modern world is like, wait a minute, you've been living in, you've been addicted to this and, like been driving drunk for decades. Like, that should give you some pause on Sunday morning. Drunkards don't inherit the kingdom of heaven. St. Paul, he says that directly, so we've swung the other way. Again, you're kind of like the old adage of balance in all things, finding the mean, finding the virtue is in the middle. There's truth in that. And it would be the same thing with confession, that, everyone, like, confession is never needed because no one ever sins. That's a problem. People sin. You just have to open your eyes and watch the television for 10 seconds. Or watch a kid. Kids are great, and I love them to death, but they sin all the time. You can see pride happen, like, oh, yeah, it's all about you. And
that's what happens.
on the other hand would be like, no one ever does anything good. There's no hope for salvation.
You said 18 times by the time you walk out of the confessional.
Right. Actually, so Calvinism is sort of like that. Like hardcore Calvinist thought is crazy. It's just like, yeah, you're going to hell. There's no hope for your salvation. See you later. Goodbye. God created you to basically damn you forever.
GG.
And you have no choice in the matter. That was John Calvin. I don't quite understand why that was attractive to people, but
Probably because it,
reconcile free will and
oh yeah, I think the reason why it was attractive was because if they were Christian, they were like, God chose me, and they felt chosen.
that's probably true.
I heard it was because they needed to, it was trying to reconcile something.
Well, I mean, his reasoning is probably that, but I'm just saying, why was it attractive from other people, and why did it spread? Right? It was like, oh, I'm Christian, therefore God chose me to go to heaven.
We're watching a show on cults right now, and it's like, how can some of these people grab into some of this stuff?
Oh yeah,
It's
sometimes
unreal.
you're like, at what point did you not stop and think like, this is kind of weird?
Can I finish my point, and then we can keep talking about cults? I love talking about cults, but so spiritual direction. This is a fun one because you can talk to a priest or someone who's deciding to be a spiritual director. So there's some lay people, but ultimately the reason for spiritual direction and why I put it on here is because I chose to go with Father Ross when he was in Napoleon. So he was my spiritual director for a couple of months there, and it was a massive help just to like get me moving and to really help me make big decisions. And so what you can do, like, and this is something that for anybody, is that like whenever you're discerning something, a big move, a job change, you lost your job, something tragic happens, or you just want to grow deeper, so you can actually call up the priests and ask them to meet. And then just be like, hey, this is what's going on in my life. I just love some spiritual direction or some direction that might help me. And Normally they're happy to help. I know these guys are, but not all priests are, sadly. But yeah, that's all that I have for that. And thanks for listening.